the next talk. So for this talk, we will switch gears a little bit and move to the cloud world. And when we are speaking about Entra ID, we have a heavy focus on the roles that exist in Entra ID. But what about all the other services and the RBAC models you have there? So that's why we have Martin here, who will speak about all of this stuff. So the stage is yours.
Now? Yes, perfect. Okay. Nice noon, everyone. So I would like to start my talk by sharing some story or some nightmare with you. It's a thing I'm worried the most, because since university I was working hard, and with my business partner we set up a company. So we were doing some kind of IT outsourcing, and through the years we moved to the MSP, MSSP space. And we dedicated all our time and energy to it. And we earned trust of more than 100 of companies. And as an MSP or MSSP company, we have unlimited access to their environments. And I'm worried that we would be, or we will be targeted by some threat actor, who will hack us, and through us, he will go after our clients, because we have the permissions and to access to their environments. And that would ruin our company, our name, our reputation, and it would be hard to recover from it. And it's something which pushes me forward, to be learning always some new stuff, to be doing some research, to avoid such a situation. And it's not just our company, it's every company which has access to some other environments. So and as well, we do incident response. And we do incident response for 8 years for ransomware incidents. And through the time, we went through 200 ransomware incidents. But after a couple of incidents, we were able to see some patterns in those incidents. That in the ransomware, the threat actors are able to escalate from a single domain user or single compromised computer to domain admins in a matter of half an hour or a couple of hours. Because their strongest part of the attack is lateral movement. And at the same time, it was the weakest part of the defenders. They were able, or they were just managing the ADs, creating users groups and so on, but they didn't understand the internal stuff, we have seen the last talk about the trust. And I'm worried that with Entra ID, we will see the similar situation. Because Active Directory and Entra ID, both of them, they are identity providers. And once identity provider is breached, it means compromise of the whole environment. And with Entra ID, there are some other new attributes attributes. And one of them is that it's cloud accessible. It's good because we can work from all around the world on our projects with our identities, but at the same time, it allows the attackers to attack any company worldwide. It's different than what we had with Active Directory, because if you want to attack Active Directory, it's probably hidden behind some firewall, NAT, or VPN. So firstly, you need to get some compromised computer or some VPN access to be able to target Active Directory. But with Entra ID, we are able to target or attack the tenants directly. And then Entra ID is like a monopoly or de facto standard for the cloud identity providers. It's hard to find a company which wouldn't be using Entra ID. And I believe that the hackers will be targeting it more and more, because it's 10 or 15 years ago, we were thinking that macOS or Linux are more secure systems because there are no attacks or malware for them. But during the time, as the cyber criminal market was growing and the penetration of those systems were growing, the more attacks appeared for that. And then Entra ID is quite new against the Active Directory, and it's evolving rapidly. So what we knew 3 years ago is now very often different. And still, there is new research going on, new things, new things which are considered misconfigurations, new attack paths, and we still need to be learning and making new best practices for the configuration. And because I think that Entra ID is so crucial, I'm trying to focus on it. Earlier this year, I made a talk at Disobey in Finland about the possibility of doing cross-tenant lateral movement in Entra ID. Because cloud is about collaboration, so the companies are collaborating together. And there are some relationships which allows you to go from one tenant to the other tenant. And I created some proof of concept script which is able to autonomously be hacking tenant by tenant and exploiting or discovering and exploiting the relationships between the tenants. So, but it's not so bad, everything, because from the defender's point of view, there is plenty of materials and articles and research and tools which can be used for learning. And as well, we are having new tools which are able, in a couple of minutes, to give us what is the security posture of the tenants, of our customers. Those tools, then they can be used in the on-prem Active Directory or in the cloud, and they are very good in identifying what are the most critical problems. But from the attacker's perspective, we could divide them into the two groups: advanced persistent threat actors and regular cyber criminals. With APTs, they are very good with Entra ID. They are having top-notch attacks. For example, that Antique Typhoon, they were able to compromise Microsoft signing key for the OAuth, and with some other mistakes in the OAuth implementation on the Microsoft side, they were actually able to forge tokens and impersonate any user in commercial cloud and in some government clouds and access their mailboxes. So they had a key for everything. Then there is the Midnight Blizzard. They were able to breach Microsoft through some legacy misconfigured enterprise applications, and they were in the Microsoft environment for some time. They created some privileged accounts there, and they were spying on their mailboxes. As well, Midnight Blizzard is, for example, aware of those relationships between the companies, and they were targeting the Microsoft partners to access their customers. And as well, they are executing attacks when they are going from on-prem environment to the cloud and back forward. So those are very good. On the other side, we have the regular threat actors. They are mostly financially motivated. And what we see that they do is once they breach some tenant and he has Azure subscription, they use that subscription to spin up some VMs and do some cryptocurrency mining, or they use some proxies to hide their attack behind those proxies. Or they just use some typical business email compromise when they are going through the compromised mailboxes, seeing if there are some invoices or some sales going on, and then they just step into the communication, alter the invoices, and siphon the money to their accounts. This is quite common, and usually the attacks which goes to us, or the victims goes to us, they are in thousands of euros or hundreds of thousands of euros of damage by one business email compromise. But I think that once the cyber criminals will find out some business model with the Entra ID, we will see a surge in the attacks, because they are they know that how they can make money except of the business email compromise is ransomware. But the ransomware is more like an on-premise problem or stuff, because with cloud there are multiple recycle bins and it's not so easy to delete or encrypt the data, so they wouldn't be restorable. So from my point of view, I think that in future we will see a lot of attacks against the Entra ID, and it's good right now to be learning and hardening our Entra ID environments. The defenders are improving all the time. Microsoft is doing a good job as well, because he's pushing the slowest partners or slowest companies, like forcing them to use MFA for admin portals and so on. So we have like MFA for all the admins. Many of the companies already have MFA for all the users. We use conditional access policies to limit the access to the environments. We have those auditing tools which are able to give us some overview about the security posture in 5 minutes. And then what is nice in cloud is the logging capabilities, which are just out of the box. Unified audit logs, sign-in logs, they are very good because with them we can do incident response much more easier than what was able with Active Directory, because with Active Directory there wasn't like proper logging out of the box. But like once the easy events for the attackers will be covered or fixed, the attackers will have to move somewhere. And I believe that they could move to RBAC, role-based access control. You know, RBAC is about assigning permissions or privileges to the users based on their roles, what's like their job position, what they should be able to do, and so on. And when Entra IAD came, I thought it's like a beautiful that we have single pane of glass, that we can go to the Entra admin portal, select a user, and we can see if the user is privileged or it's not privileged. But soon I realized that it was a naive idea, and it's much more complex. Because with the Entra ID roles, there is plenty of those Entra ID roles. Meryl did some kind of mind map, which is very nice, because we have some roles which are like global admins, which are super powerful, and they have access to everything. Then we have some roles which are specific to Entra ID, and then we have some roles which are specific to some Microsoft 365 services. But still, that's not a complete image, because the truth is like this, that all those individual services, they have their own permissions management or privileges management, and they are somehow interconnected with Microsoft Entra. So we can be like assigning privileges through Microsoft Entra, but if we want to see who is privileged or who is privileged, we need to go to each of those services, because some users can be assigned directly, they can be assigned permissions directly in that service. And like what's worst is that all of those tools which we can use to get a security posture about the Entra ID tenant, they are not aware of those RBAC. So we can get a nice grade from that tool, but still there can be plenty of misconfiguration in Entra ID. So if we would go through the RBACs, we can start with the Exchange, because Exchange was one of the first services why our customers shifted to Entra ID. And Exchange Online is like the same like the Exchange on-premise, it's just more advanced, but the things works the same. And from the audits, we see that Exchange Online is very messy often, that the customers, they are applying permissions to regular users, and it breaks tiering model, because as an admins, we have like a regular user account for the regular work, and then we have privilege account, which we use for management. But then what they start to do is that they take a regular user and assign him permissions. So admins are tiered, but the regular users, they aren't. And those misconfigurations can lead to a lateral movement, privilege escalation, because once someone is overprivileged in Exchange, he can assign him or someone else access to other mailboxes, contacts, calendars, or he can misuse the account for internal phishing. And then he can do some like security log weakening, that, for example, he can disable audit logging for some mailboxes, and then when there is an incident, it will be harder to see what was accessed, what was searched, and so on. And those like misconfigurations can be misused for business email compromise or blackmailing the company because of the leaked data. And the RBAC can be used for privilege persistence. I have some demonstrations for that. Let's start with this simple one. So as an administrator, if we go to the Entra admin portal and we pick a user, we can see that the user is not privileged because in assigned roles, there is no role assigned. But if we try to log in as that user, and try to access the Entra admin portal, or we will not get there because the user doesn't have permissions. But if we will go directly to the Exchange admin portal, we will get there and we will see the whole management for the Exchange. And with that, we can assign ourselves access to someone else's mailbox. All of that can be done in PowerShell, but as well it can be done in GUI, which like lowers the bar for some hackers or someone less skilled is able to like misuse the misconfiguration or overprivileged account. Because we can go to Outlook online and then open someone else's mailbox once we have the permissions for that. And everything that is possible because this user, this Adam, he is assigned in the permission or role group organization management, which is like an Exchange administrator. We can see that below him there is global administrator, and that's how the Entra ID roles are interconnected with the Exchange Online. Yeah, that's simple, but quite often misconfiguration. But for attackers, we can misuse such a thing for like post-breach actions as a backdoor, because the GUI is quite limited. And with Exchange Online and the RBAC, there are role groups, which we have seen that you can assign users to them. But the role groups, they consist of Exchange roles. And those Exchange roles can be assigned directly to the users by omitting or skipping the role group. And what's interesting about that is that it's missing in GUI. You cannot do that in GUI, and you cannot see it in GUI. So for that, you need to use PowerShell. And that can be very handy for the attackers, because once the environment is breached and we would want to have some like backdoor, hidden privilege backdoor, we can assign some user those permissions. So for example, this Daniel as well, he don't have any assigned roles. If we will go to the Exchange Online or admin portal, we will go to the organization management, we will not find him there. But still, if we will sign in as him to Office 365, we have full control over the Exchange. And we can work in GUI, or we can work with PowerShell. And again, we can assign ourselves permission to someone else on my box. So as a defender, if you would like to audit it, you need to go to the PowerShell and list yourself the role assignments in the Exchange. But one of the things is that, you know, it's not like you would do an output from this command and you will see all the backdoors. the thing is that those assignments are normal, regular, because those assignments are those assignments which you see in GUI, mostly those roles assigned to the role groups. So if someone is going to audit it, he needs to know what he's looking for and needs to find it like a needle in a haystack. And that GUID or 48 something, if we will do a lookup for the mailbox, we will see that that's the mailbox of that Daniel. So that's make it harder for the defenders to do the audit or to spot a backdoor. But we can go even a little bit more further, because then I realized that the roles, exchange roles, are not atomic, neither. They consist of role entries. And as well, those are not visible in GUI, and you need to go to the PowerShell. Because with those role entries, what we can do, that we can create new role for us, which will be like admin role, but we will name it differently. So if someone is doing audit and he's going, to whom is assigned the recipient management or role management role, he will miss it, because we will use some role which will be the same powerful but with different name. It's easy to create such a role. It's just one PowerShell command. And what we do with that we will create a role which will be called view-only statistics. It will be the same like role management, and the description can be whatever you want. And then we can assign this new role to some user. This time, the management role, which we have created, will be visible in the GUI as well, under the permissions. But if you are going to audit it or be looking for it, and it's called just view only and statistics, you won't think it's like an admin role. And as well, if you will just hover it and you see the description says like nothing to see, it's easy. And if you don't know what does it mean, you will probably miss it. And such a backdoor can stay for a long time in that environment. And then if the Daniel signs in again into the admin exchange portal, he will be administrator. Okay, so that was more advanced stuff. But it's not over yet, because we can make it even a little bit better from different perspective. Because once we have someone as an administrator of the exchange and we are accessing someone else's mailbox, we need to assign ourselves permissions to that mailbox, which is quite noisy. It makes some noise in the logs. And you still would be adding yourself to that mailbox, which could be spotted by someone, because this is visible in GUI. But what Microsoft did is that it allowed applications to access the exchange online, API. It gets a little bit more confusing. I think that it wasn't very good idea from the Microsoft. I will tell more about it. But the good thing with the application is that once the application is considered like an admin, you don't need to assign yourself the permissions to others' mailboxes. You can access all the mailboxes, skipping that step. So the demonstration then looks like that. For example, it's a boss breach activity. We will go to the tenant and look what are the applications in the tenant. And we see that there is one application which is called FortiGate SSL VPN. And that application doesn't have any permissions, API permissions. So it should be like, it's not doing anything. And if we will go to the certificates and secrets, we see that it doesn't have any certificates or secrets. So this application cannot sign in against the Entra ID. This application, in reality, is used for single sign-on for FortiGate SSL VPNs, and it doesn't use OAuth at all. It uses SAML for that. But for us, for attackers, it's good that we can misuse it, because it's a production application, so it's there for some purpose, and it's not, how to say, it doesn't look like it could do something malicious. But with PowerShell, we can arm the application. So what we can do is that we can add some credentials to that application, so we are able to sign in as that application. With PowerShell, we can add credentials which are valid for whatever we want. So we will create credentials which are valid for 75 years, because as an attackers, we want to have some backdoor which is like lifetime. And then we will assign that permission, that application permissions to the Exchange Online. We will say that that application is like an admin for the Exchange Online, that it can access anyone's mailbox, calendars, contacts with read-write permissions. And as the last step, we will just generate ourselves some PowerShell commands how to sign in as that application. And for this kind of backdoors, we used some tricks. A combination of them. Some of them are like from the enterprise, some of them are from different topic, but you will see soon. So I will just save the backdoor commands, how to sign in as that application, and we will go again to Entra ID portal, and we will inspect the application once again. We will see that there are no API permission, no new one. And if we will go to the certificates and secrets, you will not see the secret which we have created, because we haven't added the secret to the application registration. We have added it into the enterprise application, which is a service principle. And why we did it? Because in GUI you will not see it. So it's like hidden everything. And if we will go to the enterprise application, find the FortiGate SSL VPN, go to the permissions, we will not see any permissions. And there is no sign-in credentials tab. It's missing. But the functionality is there, but it's accessible only through the API. And why I said that it's not, by my opinion, it's not a good idea from the Microsoft to implement it like that is because what we will be misusing, our backdoor will not be using API of the Exchange, but we will be using Microsoft Graph API. For me, it's strange. I would expect that you will be assigning permissions to the Microsoft Graph through Entra ID, not through the Exchange. Through the Exchange, you should be assigning APIs for the Exchange. But they decided to do it like that. So then, if we will want to use that backdoor, we will just run those commands, which will assign us as that application. We will see what's our context against the Microsoft Graph. We will see that we are assigning as that FortiGate SSL VPN, and then we can go through the emails of whatever user we want. So in this case, it's Chloe's emails. And there are some other pros why I think that this kind of backdoor is beautiful, because the application sign-ins doesn't. The conditional access policies doesn't apply for application sign-ins. So even if there are some conditional policies requiring MFA, they will not be evaluated for the backdoor. So the backdoor is single-factor authentication, valid for 75 years, and you will not restrict it by IP with conditional access policies. So the thing is that we know what are our possibilities, like in laboratory environment, and the other thing is how are the attackers, what are their skills if they are misusing this stuff. So from what we see and what is written on the internet as well, is that those attackers, they misuse some Exchange RBAC for business email compromises. They are able to assign themselves access to other mailboxes, to create mail transport rules so that they siphon some emails to some other mailbox or forward it to some other domain or delete it before the recipient can read them. And then it's been observed that they are, for example, creating incoming connectors. So in future, they are able to be sending spam through that domain and still be valid with the SPF and DKIM and DMARC. And except of those Exchange RBACs, there is Azure RBAC as well. We see similar things with the Azure RBAC, that the customers, they are assigning permissions directly to end users. And the Azure RBAC is too complicated too. There is more than 700 of roles built in, and you can assign the permissions on different levels, like organization management, subscription, resource groups, individual resources. And when it's misconfigured, it can be used for lateral movement and privilege escalation. We can control the VMs and get a remote get a code execution in the VMs. Misuse the Azure key vaults, Azure managed identities, or we can change the log retention in log analytics. Again, we can exfiltrate the data directly, and it can serve like a privileged persistence. And there are some things which are not so common between the companies, or they are not well known between the companies which we are auditing. Just for the context, maybe the enterprises with thousands of users, which has specialists for Exchange and all the services, they are aware of those things I'm speaking about. But for the companies which we are auditing, like hundreds of employees, up to 1,000 or 2,000 employees, they don't have those specialists, and they have like Superman IT guys who are supposed to know everything, but it's not possible to know everything. So what we often see that if you buy a Azure subscription from some partner, the partner by default is assigned an owner permissions for the subscription. And you don't know how many users has access to that subscription from the partner's tenant. You don't know it. Maybe 1, 5, 10, 100. And the thing is that even if you trust your partner, but what if your partner gets hacked? Then the hackers, they can go directly to the subscriptions which are trusted. And what we recommend, if your partner is not helping you to manage your environment, you should remove this foreign principle from that Azure subscription, or assign him a lower permissions. And other thing is Azure Lighthouse. It's a new technology how to delegate permissions over the Azure subscriptions. And it has some shady stuff, which I will demonstrate it to you. Because normally, if you would be auditing the RBAC for Azure, you go to the subscription, and at the subscription, you go to the access control management and to role assignments. And we can see that for that subscription, there are 2 native users of the tenant and 1 foreign group, which is the partner who is selling the Azure subscription. So from that perspective, it's good, but there is the Azure Lighthouse. And the thing is that the Azure Lighthouse permissions are not visible in that previous view. Me, as a partner at Patron, or employee at Patron IT who's partner to some other companies, I can request access to some other tenants. And then I go to the Azure Lighthouse, and I see that subscription. And if I go to the subscription, and to see what are the RBACs, how is it set up, I will see a different view. I will see that from our tenant, from the partner's tenant, there is some group, Priv Azure Lighthouse, which has contributor permissions to the subscription. But the thing is that if the customer is just going through the IAM at Azure subscription, he will not see those permissions there. So he can easily miss it. And so that's why it can be misused by attackers to use it as a backdoor there. And as a proof that we have the permissions, we can create a new resource group in that tenant. So if the customer wants to do some audit of his environment, he has to go to the subscription and the access control, and then he has to go in Azure to Azure Lighthouse from his view, and here to see what are his service providers. And there he can see some other roles assigned to his subscriptions. So you need to go to those 2 places to be sure that you know who has access to your subscription. So with that Azure in the wild, already a few years ago, some APT groups were able to exploit those misconfigurations or exploit those partnerships between the companies. So they went after the partner, and through the partner, they went to their customers. And Intune, another powerful service in Microsoft 365, which will be more frequently used. Again, it's break steering because if the company is bigger and has some separate duties of the IT guys, so there are some global admins, and then there are some guys who are supposed to do first-level support for the workstations. So usually they have access to all the workstations in the environment. But that's an issue because it includes the workstations of the global administrators, those privileged access workstations. And it can be they can misuse application deployment or remediation scripts or scripts to deploy malware to their workstations or implant some remote control or access the data or exfiltrate the data from that. And what it's nice about the Intune, I think it's one of those services which can target the mobile devices as well, because Intune is used for mobile device management, and we can deploy applications to the mobiles. And on the mobiles, there can be more, or there can be some data which are not accessible through the SharePoint, OneDrive, or on the computer. And what could be used probably is that through mobile device management, we can deploy custom certification authority and then custom VPN profile. So maybe we would be able to do man in the middle for the mobile devices and gain access to some, I don't know, home devices, because some devices, they are using certificate pinning. So we wouldn't be able to go through, but with some applications which will not be having, which will not have certificate pinning, we will be able to gain plain text passwords, the messages and everything. And then we can disable security functions from the Intune and target the SN attackers target those devices easier, or destroy those devices or deploy BitLocker without the recovery keys, and so on. And some of the groups, they already misuse the Intune, because why not? If the defenders are able to use Intune, why the attackers wouldn't be able to do the same, right? And then from Andy Robbins, he just published some articles about Intune attack paths, how Intune can be misused for lateral movement or privilege escalation, and so on. And then there is Defender. For us, we use Defender heavily. It's like primer EDR for us right now. For different Defender products, there has been different RBAC systems, but now it's being unified under the XDR. So everything will be, all the permissions are assigned through the XDR RBAC, and there is a functionality of live response. And that live response enables you to run custom PowerShell scripts on the devices, and as well on the servers, because Intune cannot target servers, but if Defender is deployed on the servers and live response for servers is enabled, we can run custom scripts on the servers and exfiltrate the data, because there is a native functionality to download the data from the endpoint, which we are investigating. I think it's nice because everything which is what's run with through the Defender will not be considered so malicious from Defender's perspective. And we can as well suppress some alerts. So maybe if we will trigger something, the administrators will not see it because they will not receive an alert, or it will be an exception, or the incident will be auto-closed. And again, it can work like a privilege persistence, because some regular users can be made overprivileged through the RBAC of the Defender. So far, we haven't seen it misused by the attackers, but it doesn't mean anything, because maybe we haven't seen it just yet. Someone else has seen it. So, and then there is Purview. It's not used often, but for the attackers, it's a nice tool, because it's like data leak service. It allows you to search through all mailboxes, SharePoints, and OneDrives by searching through some keywords, and then you can export all the data. So you can export the whole mailboxes, or be looking for agreements and EAs intellectual property or whatever. And as the portal is not so common or well known between the small companies, they can overlook some misconfigurations, which happened to one company. It's a really nice story from Microsoft Dart. One company was breached. They realized they are breached. So they started to evict the attackers to handle the incident. But what happened, that they were playing cat and mouse game for 250 days with those attackers. So for 250 days, they weren't able to evict those attackers properly, so they wouldn't return. Then they called the Microsoft Dart team, who realized that the company wasn't compromised just by one group, but it was compromised by 6 groups, which is which sounds insane. But what the attackers did was that they used the purview with Power Platform to be searching for documents and automation through Power Platform that the documents were exfiltrated from the company. And what's interesting about that, it's maybe if someone breaches your environment, but he creates some Power Platform like automation, even if you will handle the incident in case that the compromised account, you will receive the password, you will implement FIDO keys, whatever you will do, but the automation will stay there and will be able to run under that identity. So then there is SharePoint. Again, SharePoint was heavily used on on-premise environments. It was full of RBAC permissions for all of the users because you can assign the permissions on site level, document library, pages, or in document libraries on individual folders. And it can be misused that once you store there some applications which are run by users or administrators, they store there some tools. As an attacker, you can swap the tool and bind some malware to the tool, so the next time the admin or user runs it, he will run the malware with it. Or you just have access to data you are not supposed to have access to, which can cause financial damage because as well you can alter some invoices and do some classic business email compromise scam. The attackers sometimes use the RBAC. In that case, which I share, they realized that there is some RBAC, and what they did was that they removed all the administrators from the SharePoint, so the SharePoint admins were not able to get into the SharePoint, and there was some kind of blackmailing that company, but it was a little bit lame, but maybe in future we will see some better strategies. I think that someone was telling me that you can delete the data from SharePoint or OneDrive and then empty the recycle bin of the first instance and maybe the second instance, and then if you will be lucky, they won't be able to recover the data. And then there is the Power Platform. For me, Power Platform, I haven't spent much time on it yet. I think I should put more time and effort into some research of the Power Platform because we see from our customer base that it's used more and more, and the partners who are helping those companies with the Power Platform usage, they are asking us all the time for the Fabric administrator and some other roles. I think it's that maybe we are preparing those environments for some nice misconfigurations which will kick us in the future. And that Power Platform was misused in that attack when the company was fighting 250 days with the attackers. So, and then there are some caveats as well with those RBACs. Because, as I said, we as a defenders, we are trying to implement conditional access policies, and Microsoft is giving us some templates for conditional access policies. 2 relevant are require MFA for admins and require MFA for admin portals. But the issue is that both of them, they are targeted based on the Entra ID roles. So if someone is Exchange admin through the Exchange RBAC, he will not trigger those conditional access policies. So many times the conditional access policy, or if we are using RBAC or having misconfiguration in RBAC of individual applications, we will probably miss some conditional access policies which we don't know that we will miss. And the other thing is that, for example, privileged identity management, which is used by many companies, not to have permissions assigned the whole time, but to activate the assignments. it's not working with that. Because we are not assigning Entra ID roles. We are assigning the permissions directly in the individual systems with the RBAC. Maybe privileged identity management for groups would help us, but in case that we have everything clean and tidy, and we are using the groups on purpose. And then here comes the defense. With the defense, what we need to do, we need to monitor for changes, because I believe all of those RBACs, they log into the unified audit logs. So if we are monitoring the unified audit logs, we are able to catch if someone is doing some change to the RBAC. And in case we miss it, it's good to do some regular reviews of those RBAC assignments, like once a year, once a half a year, to go if like everything is like we are expecting, that we don't have any forgotten users, forgotten privileged users, and so on. And definitely we need some new research in that RBAC field. And as we have seen with the exchange, that it's not so easy to do the review manually, because we need to go to the PowerShell because GUI is not enough, and with the PowerShell we need to inspect all the roles if they just contain the entries which we are expecting and so on. It would be nice to have some automation for that. And with that, I have to say that I've stumbled upon a guy, Thomas Neunheim, and he just hit the nail, because he is building a tool, Entra, and that tool has like auditing for RBAC of Intune and Defender, and he's adding more of them. And what he's doing, that he's not doing just for the name of the privilege groups or RBAC groups, but he's going by the single permissions assigned for those groups. So he's in the right direction, and I think that's the future for how we should be auditing the RBAC. And yeah, that's all from my talk. I hope you liked it. If we have some questions, I guess we have time.
Thank you for the great talk.
Oh, thanks.
I have just one question. So when you assigned the Exchange RBAC rights to a service principal, you used the Microsoft Graph. Do you have to use the Microsoft Graph, or can you also use the Exchange API?
Yeah, you can use the Exchange API, but with different permissions. It's not so easy then, I remember,
You mentioned
it's over here. If we would go through the documentation of the Microsoft, you see that below there is application EVS access app, which gives you access to the EVS access as app. But the thing is that against the Microsoft Graph, I can sign in as the application with just the regular secret. To be able to sign in to the Exchange Online, I have to use certificates. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated, but still you can do it. But I think that to be able to use that last role, I need to add, in Microsoft Entra, I need to go to that application and add her permission to Exchange Online and access as app, which is not which doesn't give you any permission, but it marks the application that it can sign into the Exchange Online. Yeah, and then it's bad because it will be more visible. You will be thinking why this application has the access to the Exchange Online. So that's why I have chosen the Microsoft Graph API.
Yeah, but you assigned not these permissions, right? You assigned the RBAC role. And then usually it doesn't matter which API you use if you have the RBAC role in the backend. So I'm just wondering
I
if
think
you can use both.
The Exchange Online API will not let you sign in as that application without having that API permission in Entra ID marked or assign it.
All right, it could be.
I think it's like that, because when I was doing I was trying to misuse some other permissions, because, for example, Exchange on-premise environment could do password reset. And there is some role like password reset. I was thinking, yeah, maybe it could be nice to reset user's password in Entra ID through the Exchange Online, because in RBAC there is such a role. But it's there, but it's not valid anymore. It's not usable. Like now in the documentation, Microsoft says like, yeah, those commands are valid just on on-premise environments, and in cloud it's not valid anymore. And to sign into the Exchange Online as an application, I'm not able to do it without having that application in Entra ID, assign it or consented that Exchange Online API permission access as app.
All right, you're giving me some ideas, so thanks.
Okay.
Any more questions?
Hi. I'm wondering which roles or permissions would be needed from an attacker's perspective to actually establish these persistence techniques. I mean, if you're a global admin, it should be possible for all the endpoints, but is there different like roles for the different endpoints, or what is needed like from an attacker's perspective to go for these techniques you showed?
Yeah. Okay, so I consider it, those like RBAC, I see it like two types. One is that the defenders, they did some misconfiguration, and you as a hacker, you just phished some user, and then you realize that the user, he's a regular user in Entra ID, but for example, in Intune, he has admin permissions over some endpoints. Then you can misuse it for lateral movement or data exfiltration. But you cannot assign yourself more permissions through that RBAC. And in case that the RBAC is used like a backdoor, I'm considering it that it's a post-breach activity of full compromise of that tenant. Because as a global admin, you can do whatever you want with that RBAC. And for example, if you to be able to be working with some RBAC, you can have those permissions for specific services. For example, if in Exchange you have that role management, role assigned, you can do whatever you want with that Exchange, as I have like demonstrated. But you need to have that role management for Exchange. If you will be Intune administrator, you will be able to do it. But I don't think that we will like stumble or we will meet it often, such a conditions in the real world.
Okay. So usually it's a full compromise.
Yeah, I'm expecting full compromise. Right. You do a full compromise, and then you are trying to hide some backdoor that once they kick you out, that you are able to come back.
Okay, thank you. More questions?
Martin, how deep did you go with testing assigning RBAC roles to PIM managed groups? Because my experience is that like whenever you activate the membership, so it may take up to unlimited time to apply the permissions on different admin portals. So
so you mean the timing? How long does it take?
No, I mean like you use PIM managed group. Assigning some RBAC role, let's say.
Yeah, I haven't used PIM. I'll actually say that PIM will not help you because PIM is working just with Entra ID roles, but not with the RBAC of specific services.
Yeah, but you can have a group that you'll be managing PIM, and you can assign RBAC role to that group.
Yes.
And that's how you will get just-in-time access for the group members. But unfortunately, there are like big delays in applying those permissions on those individual admin portals. That's why my question, if you played with that,
no, I haven't played with that.
I wasn't patient enough just to wait until permissions are applied in some way.
For us, like for the companies which we serve, PIM is not used much because I don't know. For me, PIM is like the problem with PIM is that if you are an attacker, you breach an account who is eligible global administrator, so you breach him. He's not global admin, but you will wait with his session open, and once the real user will do the activation of the rights, you will receive it on the other session as well. So for me, I don't feel like PIM helps us a lot, but maybe I get it wrong. I don't know.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you, Martin. Great talk.
Okay, thank you very much.